Given Pixar's uneven output when it comes to sequels, and the fact that Toy Story 3 very much felt like a definitive wrap-up for the series, can a fourth one be anything other than a waste and something that undermines what came before? Yes, it Canada! Toy Story 4. I have had some, let's go with unoptimistic feelings about this project. You liked this, you spent money on this, you want to spend more money on this, how about this one? Yeah. But you know what? And I've said this in the past, but it's been a while since I've been able to properly put it into practice. I can't remember the last time I got to, but I got to with this. And that is the fact that despite my very frequently being very skeptical about a lot of movies that come out, I love being wrong about that. And I was wrong. I honestly thought that there was no way, given the way that Toy Story 3 ended, and I don't even like Toy Story 3 nearly as much as almost everyone else I know. It's a good movie, don't get me wrong, but it's a strong ending, and where do you go from there? I thought there was nowhere for it to go. I thought that there was nothing that this film could do or offer that wouldn't just inherently undermine what came before, or make it seem, cheap. And it doesn't do that. This thing's got a number of things going for it. The first is that it in no way tries to replicate the feel, the climax, or even like the emotional tones of the third one, which is good. And then in addition to that, the whole thing just feels, you know what it is? It doesn't even feel like a cash grab follow-up. It feels like a coda. It feels like a denouement. It feels like the come down from the climax. So if we're looking at all four films, you've got your first film that sets everything up and establishes the relationship. You've got your second film that escalates, and definitely in terms of the emotional, and it points you towards where things are going to go. And then the third is your climax, both in terms of the emotion and also like in the lives of these characters. This feels like the most harrowing thing that they're going to be put through. And normally in a trilogy, that's where you stop. But there's something to be said for being able to have a come down from that climax, to have something that just feels like, oh, okay, but also is still serving up like a working story, but doesn't feel the need to reach for what the third one reached. It's just like, it's all okay, and here we go, take a breath. And it's really good for that. I think part of what was smart about it is there's the much bigger emphasis on humor in this. I would say it's the funniest one since the second. It might even be the funniest one of the series. There's a lot of emphasis on the humor. And under other circumstances, I might think they're doing that because they don't have a story to actually tell, but they do have a story, but it makes sense for the way that this wraps things up to have it feel lighter, especially given how heavy the third one was. This is the palate cleanser. This is what leaves you with a more, okay then. And I'm gonna have to start getting into spoilers pretty quick. I mean, I'll just say it looks great. It's very funny. The characters, both old and new, are good and well used. New characters tend to get more of a focus than old ones. Primary characters are Woody, Bo Peep, who's returning. We didn't see her in the third one, but she's been in the series before. And the new character, Forky. are the major features. We also have additional new characters who are memorable, like Duke Kaboom, voiced by Keanu Reeves, who's wonderful, and Ducky and Bunny, voiced by Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele, who are wonderful. And we get to know a little bit more about Bonnie's family, which is great. A lot of the older toys that aren't Woody are kind of sidelined. Buzz gets a little bit to do. Jesse gets a little bit to do. There's a couple of moments for characters like Trixie and Dolly, but by and large, they're just kind of there. But it's okay because this is very much, actually, ultimately, this is Woody's story more than anyone else, specifically. And it's a good one. I'm really surprised how much I like this. I like it more than the third one. And again, while I do think the third one is overrated in some circles, the third one's still a very good movie. I like this better. And in order to explain why, I gotta start getting into spoilers. So, I'm gonna now start to dip into that. So there's a lot going on here that makes this feel justified. Because a big part of what I was afraid of going to this movie was, okay, well, we're just going to go through the same cycle we went through with Andy, but now it's Bonnie. But it is a very different thing that is going on here, especially in terms of Woody. What you realize fairly early on into the movie, and gets explored as a theme as it continues, is that you realize, and this didn't occur to me before, and I'm pretty sure it didn't occur to Woody until now, until his situation changed. But a big part of his undying devotion to Andy and him always pushing everybody, we need to be here for Andy. A big part of what gave him the drive to do that was the fact that he was the favorite. He was Andy's favorite toy. He's not Bonnie's favorite toy. It's not to say Bonnie doesn't love him, it doesn't play with him, but he's not the favorite. And he knows that. And he's finding himself with a little less purpose than he had before. Not no purpose. He's not listless, but the passion for what he does can't be at the same level because the appreciation of what he isn't as high with Bonnie as it was with Andy. And that's not portrayed as a fault of Bonnie. That's just the nature of this. It can't always be the same the second time around. And you can take that into any number of extrapolations for any number of different kinds of relationships, whether it be romantic relationships, familial relationships. It's not, you can't get what you had before with someone new. It's going to be its own thing. And that may include being slightly less fulfilling. And that's where Bo comes in. Now, Bo Peep, voiced by Annie Potts, who I like anyway, so that's nice. They do a great setup with her. First of all, explaining why she wasn't in the third film in the opening segment. That works very well. But also creates a great through line and wonderful payoff for the end. Because here's your big spoilers. This is your last warning. Woody leaves the toys and goes to be with Bo. And Bo's a lost toy. She doesn't belong to anybody. And Woody chooses that because he's reached a point and a circumstance where being there for Bonnie isn't meaningless, but he's never going to be appreciated for doing that the way he was being there for Andy. And maybe it's time for him to do something for himself instead of just for his kid. And maybe he's earned that. Maybe he needs that. And that's the decision he ultimately makes. And it feels right. And it feels earned. And it feels like a nice additional conclusion. Because as much as the third film was the end of Andy's story, it was the end of the story of these toys as Andy's toys, this feels like the conclusion of Woody's story specifically. And that feels like a good note to go out on. And I would be very surprised if they announced a Toy Story 5. Actually, partly because I know that the opening weekend was not bad, but kind of soft by Disney Pixar standards. So I'd be surprised if we got a fifth one. But I also, I mean, granted, I already thought there was nowhere to go after the third one, but like they managed to pull a rabbit out of a hat and give us this. But I would be very skeptical if they wanted to try and roll the dice on that a second time, especially like it would either have to be a movie without Woody, period, or they'd have to come up with something very contrived reason to bring him back with the rest of the group, which would feel like it's undoing this, and this is just nice and sweet. And Forky is very funny. My daughter loved Forky. She thought he was hilarious. Now, Forky does, if you are a nitpicker for logistics, Forky raises a lot of questions about how any of this works. And the film itself kind of hangs a lampshade on that. Because it has like little snippets during the first half of the credits before it just becomes, the scroll of names. They have little bits, and one of them being Forky basically saying flat out, "I don't know how any of this works," and I feel like that's the filmmakers acknowledging, like, please don't think too much about this, just roll with us on this. So I know there are like the big weird unifying theories of Pixar movies where somehow they're all taking place in the same universe. Boo is in Bonnie's kindergarten class, so there's your connection for this. But the rules are weird. Anyone who wants to try and figure that out, I guess I'm not going to tell people not to, because I guess people have fun doing that kind of theorist stuff, but like, there's no secret code here. Just roll with it. I also like that this film ultimately doesn't have a villain, which is another thing that makes it feel like a nice, calm coda to the overall series. Because obviously in the first film we had Sid, which was the kid who didn't take proper care of his toys, sort of broke the toy owner relationship. Then we had the prospector, who just didn't have an appreciation for what it meant to be loved by a child, because he never had one. And then the third film, we have Lotso, who did know the love of a child, but then got burned when that was taken away from him, and that twisted him. And it's nice that we kind of get Gabby here, and she's set up very much like she's going to be the villain. But she's not. Not really. She's a little naive. She's a little self-centered, but she's not evil. And what she wants is incredibly relatable, especially for the other toys, which is why Woody gives her his voice box. And I did kind of like that initially she doesn't get what she wants because of that. Because you don't get one thing and suddenly everything in the world works. That's not life. There's no magic pill to suddenly make everything okay. But they were still able to give her a nice, satisfying end for her part in the story. And also, part of what made her seem like a villain is they really leaned into how unsettling ventriloquist dummies were. They've got them as her henchmen. So, yeah. That leaned into that pretty nicely. I also I do want to single out Bonnie as well. It's funny, thinking back on it, it occurred to me how little we actually know Andy, despite the fact that he was in 3 films, because by and large, we only really get to know Andy through Woody's love of him. We don't actually see Andy himself all that much. Spend all that much time with just getting to know him as a character. Bonnie, we get quite a bit of time with, which is nice, especially given, as I said, I'd be surprised if there's a 5th one. So it feels nice that in this, just, this and her introduction in the previous film, feel like we really get to know her, and they capture her very well. Being the father of a young daughter, I can recognize a lot of what they managed to capture. Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was kind of doing that in my head for so much of Bonnie's stuff. So that was really cool. And she was really sweet. It's just a nice movie. And especially given how, I think I even used the word already, harrowing the third film was. Especially towards the end of it. It felt good to just come in and have a nice movie. this is just nice and sweet and endearing. And I think I kind of love it. Toy Story 4 completely caught me off guard by being excellent. Not just good, like excellent. It's genuinely nice to be wrong sometimes. Toy Story 4, have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. A whole bunch of stuff to do because there's buttons and links and all that stuff for you to go on and poke and prod and push buttons. But I'm also not going to make you do it. I appreciate it, absolutely. The Patreon especially. But at the end of the day, folks, you know what? You're the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.